Right, let's go ahead and get started with the Mac management session. So we're going to talk some Mac now. I can see a whole bunch of Macs on the desk here, but I tend to speak to three different types of customers about Macs. Those that have a lot of Macs or exclusively Mac. Those that have a few Macs that are coming into their organization or just a subset of maybe Macs for their executive level people. Or there are people that say they don't have any Macs. And I don't think I found a customer yet that does not have Macs. Somewhere, whether it's somebody sneaking it in on the network or one executive in one country has insisted, it's just a fact of life that you are going to see these things at some point. So Symantec does have a strategy around Mac. We don't think that we can be all things to all people. So I'm going to say that up front. But what I do think we can do, and let me just skip on to my side, what we do think we can do, and this is from the very beginning when we first started looking at bringing Mac functionality into our products, is that we wanted to bring Mac to you in such a way that if you're a Windows shop or you're a Windows administrator, you can do at least the basics for Mac in a way that you understand. So we didn't go for a native Mac look and feel. We didn't go kind of whole into the Apple ecosystem. We tried to do it in such a way that it would somewhat seamlessly sit side by side with what you're doing today. So that has a benefit, and it also has a cost to us. The benefit is that when Macs start to come into an organization, it's a super easy way, or using our products is a really easy way to bring them under management, do the things that you need to do. And it's a pretty good experience for most people that try that. As more Macs come in and as people get more mature in the way that Macs work, some of our customers look for more. And they look for specialist tools that are dedicated towards managing Macs. And that's where we tend to get a little more out of our comfort zone. I think we'll be quite open about that. And it's not really where we're trying to win. We're not trying to be the best of the best of the best in Mac. We're trying to give you everything that you need to do really solid Mac management. But if you're a shop that really wants to go to town and do everything the Apple way, you might find that there are some limitations. So I'm going to say that up front. If you haven't looked at our Mac capability, that is where we are pitching, kind of in that middle ground. In saying that, it's one of the areas that we're doing a lot of active work right now, and we're adding functionalities. There are two features, one that we have just recently shipped with 8.1, and one that we're about to ship, which I'll go through in just a second, that are bringing us more into that space of Mac specialization. So we're trying to move up that stack as quickly as we can, so do expect to see more of that. So that's our kind of client management suite strategy. We do have Mac support in Go Solution Suite as well. For those of you that don't know, or if you weren't in the session that I had previously, Go Solution Suite is heavily based on Deployment Solution 6.9. So if you were ever using that product, it's a kind of a like-for-like experience. We have management capability there, not imaging capability, but management capability. And it's a little more basic. It relies on you having some more skills. But I'll go through the detailed features of that in just a second as well. So let's have a look at the key features that we have in CMS. This is, again, going to look terribly familiar to you because we've tried to get as much parity in there as possible with the support we have for Windows. The first one is network discovery. So there's kind of good and bad news in this space. The good news is that if there is a Mac attached to the network, we will find it. So we will see that there is a device there, and you can do what you would usually do with that, track it down and bring it under management. The bad news is there are two things that will limit your ability to be able to do that. The first is whether SSH is turned on, and if it's not, you're not going to be able to push an agent to that device. So it's off out of the box, and unless you turn it on, you're kind of stuck with actually doing an automated push deployment. So think about that if you're doing a Mac refresh or something like that. You could potentially turn that on and give yourself some more flexibility. Most of our customers find another way to put the Mac agent on there. There are several ways of trying to do that, but it is a limitation that we have. The other one tends to be more of a concern, actually. The way that Macs present themselves on the network, when we discover them, they don't show up as Macs, just because of a limitation of the information that they provide us. We're constantly reviewing that because, frankly, we need to fix that. Because having just a generic device come up, it helps you because you know something's there, but it doesn't give you, everything you need to do, everything you need to do the things you need to do to bring that under management. So there's a bit of manual work there. But we can, as I say, discover Macs, and we do have that capability to push under the right circumstances. The second thing is we do have a dedicated agent for Mac. So we followed this is probably the one place where we followed the kind of Apple design guidelines. So it looks and feels like a Mac app. It looks slick. It's exactly how you would expect it to be. We have the ability to hide that in the same way that we can with Windows, so it can be up there on the menu bar or not. The benefit of keeping it up on the menu bar is that we do support a link to the self-service portal, so the software portal. So that's the way that customers would go to get access to software, assuming that you've obviously packaged that and made it available to them. We do also have some good troubleshooting options there as well. You can see that just on the second row there, and that's going to help you troubleshoot any issues that are out there. So our Mac inventory is pretty comprehensive. We have a range of different things that we can get on the hardware side, on the software side, kind of the main things that you would expect to be able to see. And you can report on that in the same way as you can with Windows. It all goes into the CMDB. And it's one of the things that we try and focus on is to try and give you that kind of parallel intermixed experience. So you can report on everything holistically. So it's that kind of heterogeneous story. So we pull as much information as we can as possible. But again, if there's something that we're not getting that you need, custom inventory is there for you. So assuming you've got some knowledge on how to get that information and write the right scripts, we can do that. We do have a ton of samples out there on Symantec Connect as well. I know I've done a lot of scripting in my past as well. It's always great to have something that's nearly there and to tweak it, and that's why we've got a bunch of samples that are on there. The next thing is application delivery. So this works kind of similar to the way that Windows works. Obviously, we have to work with the formats that Apple provides us. So we can get those DMGs, we can interrogate them, we can pull out the command line, so you don't have to worry about figuring out what the sort of execution kind of command line is for that. We do all of that work for you. And so if you don't have an understanding of how to work with these packages, as I say, we take most of that pain away from you. As I mentioned, we do have support for the software portal as well. So once you've imported those packages, you can push them out. We do also have the software detection rules as well. So you can do that same kind of compliance and reinstallation checking that you can do with Windows. We have also provided a filter capability on the software catalog. We have some customers that just have Macs and nothing else, so you can filter on that. If you just want to have somebody focused on Mac and somebody focused on Windows, you can have their kind of view specialized to what they're trying to do. So it's very similar to the Windows environment. You'll always see slight variations just because of the technology and the way the packages work. It can get a little sticky with Mac applications. They are packaged in different ways, and there are different formats, but we don't get too much feedback that there are too many problems with us working with those package types. So this is a kind of new thing that we're about to bring in. It's application metering for Mac. So this is something that's been a gap for quite a while. For those of you that aren't using application metering on the Windows side or don't know what that is, this is the ability to see what is executed down there at the endpoint. So by adding that to Mac, and you will notice that the screenshots here are actually from Windows, so just kind of ignore that. We're just finishing up some new screenshots. But you'll be able to track which Mac applications have been executed in your environment. There are one or two limitations to that, which once you get digging into that, I think we'll document that in our, probably in the release notes or in the guide, a couple of limitations in whether an application is considered to be installed or not. You can mount DMGs and other things, so just be a little careful of that. But otherwise, the functionality is pretty solid. As always, once you know what's been used, yeah, sorry, question? There's no blocking so far. That's on our list of things to do. So yeah, no blocking right now. That's a good question. Thank you. So as always, once you've got that information of what's been executed, you can report on installed versus used, and do that usual good stuff around harvesting. Obviously, the application metering functionality has a few uses. One of them is the blocking capability, and we will very likely bring that to market fairly quickly. But the one that we wanted to focus on is that kind of license harvesting story. And as mentioned, once you get in there and you see the look and feel, we're looking at usage at the product level. You kind of see how that works when you start playing with it, but it does work very, very similar to the way that the Windows side is operating. So the next one is Mac patching. This is a little different, and again, it's something that we've got on our list to try and rectify. But right now, we lean on the Apple capability to deploy patches. So we're essentially pulling the strings on that inbuilt functionality in the operating system. That's helpful in some ways. It makes it kind of easier to implement, but it's not terribly helpful in other ways because you have less control about how those patches go out, where they come from, and where the bandwidth is being used. So we call the Apple Update Service, and you can use it with an Apple Update server if you are concerned with how that traffic is going to be moving across the internet. So we do support that. I'm pretty sure at some point we're going to come back and tidy that up and make sure that you can do patching for Mac in the same way that we do it with Windows today. Mike is covering our patch capability right now. If you want some more details on that, sorry to put you in the firing line there, but come see Mike. He's the guy who's covering that. So all the things that you can do, so obviously us pulling the strings on the Apple capability is a little different, but once you've got those patches deployed, you can report on it in broadly the same way. So all of that reporting and control is all available to you. There are some options to not just patch the operating system, any of those kind of inbuilt Mac apps, anything that kind of Apple can patch, we can pull the strings on as well. So it's not just the OS. If Apple is also patching some of those additional apps as well, you can pull the strings on those in exactly the same way. So Mac imaging. So obviously this is one of the products that I cover. I actually changed the wording on this slide. It did say simple to configure, and I changed it to relatively, because we're kind of in a halfway house right now. It's much easier than if you try and do it with all the kind of the Apple infrastructure that you need to set up and then kind of plug us into that. It's much easier than that because it's all built into our site server infrastructure. So setting it up is relatively easy. I put relatively there because it is still different to Windows. It's a little awkward. So the size of the files to build the NetBoot images is very large because you need to use the whole image. Again, if you come to have a look at this, you'll see it. And we have some bespoke apps that we use to make that whole process a little easier. But it's not perfect, but it is going to get you to where you need to go. We do have things, hardware independence is a little easier with Macs. Obviously, there's less of them. But assuming that you're using the most up-to-date version of their kind of multi-platform flavor of the operating system, it will give you independence across the hardware. It's easy to maintain in the sense of imaging Macs is easy to maintain. There are only so many flavors of the hardware. Most people tend to stay there or thereabouts on the versioning of Mac. One thing that you're going to have to look out for is people upgrading Mac on their own and just seeing that update and pressing that button. We all know that Apple is really keen to give users control of their experience, but be very, very wary of that. So we got burned a couple of times because our support for Mac was a bit behind the curve. I even fell victim to that, I think, about 4 years ago when I got a new Mac. And our IT department said, well, we don't have support for any, it wasn't just the sort of Altiris applications. It was pretty much everything else. They were like, oh, we haven't got the latest version, so here it is, just kind of work it out for yourself. And I kind of threw it in my direction, and I kind of had to piece that together. We fixed that pretty quickly, and now we are really, really hot on that support. So hopefully all of you have seen some vast improvements over the last few years in how quickly we provide our operating system support. So I'm pretty pleased that we're there or thereabouts. So you should be able to move with your users, with maybe a small delta, but you should be able to get pretty close.
Can I add a comment to that?
Yeah.
That's extra important on Macs because when they sometimes release new hardware, it comes with a new OS, and you can't run the old OS on the new hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas Windows, you got that crutch for a certain amount of time, generally measured in years. You can run the old OS until that support catches up.
Okay, yeah, so the comment there, just in case anybody didn't catch that, is that quite often when you're buying hardware from Apple, it will come with the latest flavor of the operating system, whether you like it or not. So you have no choice. So yeah, it's a very, very good point. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Mac profile management because this just landed in our 8.1 release. We thought a great deal about how to do this and why we should do it, and bearing in mind the strategy that we have, how we should implement this. So we've tried to, again, strike that balance to make it very, very easy to use, but not to try and reinvent the wheel too much. The way that Apple do things, they like to change things fairly frequently, and we didn't want to put something out there that suddenly we'd have to maintain that. Every time Apple makes a slight change, we'd have to jump on that. So we've tried to, strike that balance to get it just about right. looking at the kind of key challenges that we were trying to solve, the first one is that there are still unmanaged Macs out there. I speak to many customers that say, yeah, we have Macs, but they kind of do their own thing and we tolerate them, and we don't have to worry about Macs because it's Windows that are targeted by sort of hackers and viruses and that type of thing. And I think there are still elements of that are true, but as Mac becomes more prolific in organizations, the number of attacks that we see against those is rising at exactly the same rate. So I think if you do have unmanaged Macs, even if you do the basics, even if you just know where they are, what they're doing, and what their patching status is, and what software is on there, you should really be at least that level. It's not difficult. I say it's super easy with our tools. For me, there's not really an excuse to have unmanaged Macs out there anymore, especially now that we've got the SEM functionality for Mac as well. So I would recommend that you're doing that kind of bare minimum to bring them under management. And one of the reasons why I mentioned that here as part of the profile management piece is that this kind of going into profile management is that next stage. It's that next sort of kind of level of control. So if you were thinking that maybe that kind of basic level of control is not really that interesting, we are now stepping up the game and moving you into that next level. So the next one is that, and maybe I should stop there just a second and explain what a profile is on a Mac, just in case anybody isn't aware. So in the same way, I guess in the same way that Active Directory is able to configure a Windows machine, a Mac profile is able to configure a Mac. So it allows you to control user settings, security settings, and a whole bunch of things that you can control. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can have it so you set that policy, but you can still change it. And you can have that set so that only a centralized administrator can change it. So you can lock them down to some extent now on that kind of configuration side. So one of the problems that creates is you're not going to have the same profile for all of your Macs, most likely. I mean, it's highly likely that that's not going to be the case. If you use the Mac tools, you can build the profiles out pretty easily, but how do you get them out in any structured way to the different types of machines that you have? And that's where kind of we come in to play a really special role in using our kind of comprehensive target builder to mean that you can get those profiles out to the right places. So that's one of the key things that we add to the story here. And the final thing is that once that's out there, how can you track what's happening? I mean, Mac users can be just as kind of sneaky as Windows users. They will try and get around stuff and change things if they feel it's going to make their job easier. So we wanted to give you the capability to see once that profile goes out there, is it going to stay out there, or is somebody going to try and change something? So the way that we do it, and it's coming back to that kind of balanced story, is that we don't give you the capability to natively create these profiles. And there's two reasons why we do that. The first one I've already covered is that if we try to do that, we'd have to keep up with all of the changes. If Apple changes something or adds a field or changes some way that they structure the files, we're going to have to move with that pretty quickly, or it's all going to shut down. And the second reason is the actual UI. There's a couple of tools that you can use to create these profiles. The UI and the experience in those is actually pretty good. When all of the different options and the drop downs, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And we didn't really feel the need to reinvent the wheel on that. So what we do is we actually provide a link to those tools as part of creating a policy, and you can just go ahead and create those profiles, and it spits out a file that you're then able to import into our UI. So bear in mind that you will be building those profiles in the tools, and there are two that are provided by Apple. They have one of them slightly more specialized than the other, but there are many tools out there that would allow you to build those profiles. So we're not choosy about which one of those you would use. So you come into the console. The first thing that you're able to do is pull in that configuration file. We'll then tell you broadly what is in the file that we've just received. We don't go to the level yet, and this is something that we're working on, to tell you absolutely everything that is in that file, but we give you kind of the broad areas that you're configuring, just so you can just have a quick check in your mind and make sure that that is the right file that you're trying to deploy. We do also provide the capability to get that profile back out. It seems maybe strange that I'm mentioning that, but we can conceive of a time when somebody loads a policy into one of our, a profile into one of our policies. That person disappears out of the organization, and you have no idea what's in that file. Maybe that file goes missing. I mean, who knows what could happen? So if you need to, you can pull that file back out, modify it, edit it, and we didn't want to, have it lost when it went into our software. So the next thing you're able to do, I've already mentioned, is to build targets. Just again, this is where the real power is. So once you've built those profiles and the different flavors for the different parts of your organization, you can then start to target those at those organizations. And you've got all the usual flexibility with our target builder. So the next thing that happens is the profile is pushed down to the device. Again, if you haven't seen this, it's all pretty straightforward stuff. You don't need to go and look at any of this stuff, but this is just some screenshots to show you how it looks. Our policy framework, ensures that policy will stay applied if it's removed. So you have some control over that, but if that profile is removed, the policy will then put it back again. And then we also provide a couple of different reports in the console, so you can see who has a policy applied and has, for some reason, removed that, and the profile has gone with it. We do also have just one other point that I'll mention, which is actually back here somewhere, if I can find it. Okay, there is an option here, and this is again about keeping your house a little bit tidy. You have the option to tick a box here to say, if this policy is disabled, go ahead and remove that profile from the device. Again, we've tried to think through this as much as we possibly can. And again, we can conceive a situation where you've got all of these different policies which are pushing out these profiles. And what happens when if you turn that policy off, if you migrate and that policy isn't there, you get to control whether the policy controls the profile. So if you tick that box and this policy is disabled, we'll take that profile off the device. It means you don't have to go ahead and do that manually. And again, you have control to have it around the other way as well. I guess as always, you'd want to be a little careful in here because some people are quite happy to go ahead and disable policies. And usually if you do that, it doesn't have necessarily a direct effect on the endpoint. So if it's a policy around software deployment and you turn that off, all that's going to happen is that maybe that software won't get reinstalled. If you have that button ticked and you disable this, you will pull that policy off the device. So just be aware that that's going to happen. So the main benefits, and I guess I've pretty much covered these, but we'll recap on them anyway, is that you can now manage Macs fairly comprehensively. So not only have we got all the bases ticked with the patching, the software delivery, and inventory, all of that good basic stuff that we do, you can now keep those Macs configured. And with the application metering stuff as well, you can also do the license harvesting story as well. So hopefully you can see that our Mac story is starting to build, and we're starting to move into other areas. I will mention one thing here, just because I don't want to skim over that. You can manage Macs with MDM now, and I think most people should hopefully be aware that that's a possibility. We're putting a lot of time in thinking about how we bridge the gap between where we are and this kind of modern MDM-based style of management. So we're having another fresh look at that. Most of you may be aware that we've done some work in the cloud. We've tried some things there. Symantec has made a good play at becoming an MDM provider, and we've taken some steps away from that in recent times as the Symantec strategy has shifted. So if it looks like we're kind of still feeling our way, I think that's probably still the case. But certainly within our group, we still feel that it's essential that we try and build something in that area. So don't think that we're ignoring the kind of modern MDM story. We're not. But we think that there's not too many compelling reasons why you'd want to do it with MDM if you've got this capability in place. Always pushing an agent to a device is going to give you that extra level of capability. But be aware we are always constantly evaluating that. So I've covered off the targeting piece. I can't emphasize that enough, that is pretty useful. And the automated compliance reporting as well. They're kind of the three key things that we think we can solve there. So that's kind of a quick overview. Again, there's infinite detail in each of these areas. In the additional resources section, I'll tell you where to go to find out more. We have a specific guide for Mac that we've written. So please go ahead and check that out. It's definitely worth a read. I didn't want to go through our Mac capability without covering Ghost Solution Suite. I've already alluded to it, and this is just a single slide. You're going to get the basics. So if you're running GSS today, it's actually not a bad way of doing Mac deployment. We have a specific agent for Mac. It reports into the console. We do inventory, so we have all of the basic categories, hardware inventory, drive inventory, software, network configurations. That's pretty much everything that you need. GSS will always be a little weak because it doesn't have a reporting capability, so be aware that CMS is it's definitely the full-fat version of our kind of Mac support. But if you are running Ghost Solution Suite, just be aware that it is there. We also have the capability to run scripts as well. So you can do pretty much everything you want. You just need to know how to do it in a script. And as always, we have that really great interface for building kind of complex jobs and have all those different tasks stitched together. You just kind of need to know. You need somebody who knows Mac. I guess is what I'm saying. So you can do broadly the same things, but it would just it's aimed at a different user experience. But just know that it is there within Ghost Solution Suite, and we have some very prominent customers making use of that as well. So let's just hit the final slide here. Is the additional resources. I've mentioned that we've actually created a specific guide. We've had that for a while now, and we rev that with every version, but this is a dedicated guide to Mac management. It tends to be a little interesting because it touches on many different products within our portfolio. So the way we structured things previously is you had a software guide, you had a patch guide and a deployment guide, and Mac was kind of dotted in and out of there. We've tried to do what we can to bring that into more of a horizontal kind of guide. And so please take a look at that. As always, you've heard from me many times about this. We love feedback about these things. If you think this thing sucks, let us know, and tell us how we should change it to make it more consumable, because Mac is an important side of our story. We do have a lot of functionality for Windows. That is where we started. It's probably where most people are most comfortable. But we are very, very quickly becoming just as specialized on the Mac side, and we use a ton of them within Symantec as well. So, yes.
Is Symantec looking with Apple like the DEP program?
That's a great question. Yeah. So the question was, are we looking at integration with the Apple DEP program? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, that actually falls on me. When we were looking at our kind of unified endpoint management story in the cloud, that was one of our top level things. Symantec has integration with that capability, or has had it with its mobile project, and we were looking to hook in with that. Because that, we've kind of gone in a different direction in recent times, we need to re-look at that capability. You're kind of in the queue with Symantec IT, which is kind of whipping me for that capability right now. So we're very, very aware of that. I have it in the stack. It's in the backlog. I know what we need. I know what we need to do. We're just trying to find the right place for it. So not today, but we do know.
It's heavy MDM base.
Yep. Yeah, it makes it so much easier. I mean, it takes a huge problem away when you get that. So we're actually really interested in what's happening in the whole modern MDM space right now. It's just blowing things wide open. And so it's actually, we still feel that most of our customers want the depth of functionality that we offer. They want solutions to stay on-prem to the most part as well. There's great benefits to going to the cloud. There's no doubt about that. And we really spent a lot of time looking into that and what it means. And I think we will continue on that path when the time is right. But the problem we have is that our products are too powerful. They're too powerful to really let them be outside of the corporate network. At least that's how most of our customers seem to feel. I mean, I've kind of lost count of the stories of where somebody who's maybe not too comfortable with using the console has done something and have blown a bunch of machines away. I mean, especially in the kind of DS6-9 days, and the same with GSS, you can drag and drop a job onto the top of the tree accidentally and just watch. A colleague of mine did that at a previous employer accidentally and just watched the whole floor just shut down. It went and the whole floor just kind of shut down. And luckily, he managed to run and just tug the network cable out of the server, and he got away with that one. So, but we know how powerful these products are, and so we think right now doubling down on our capabilities on-prem, making sure that we don't just go for this kind of light version in the cloud. We really feel like that's the right thing to do right now, but we are looking to augment it and just kind of push the barriers into that modern management. A Mac is really pushing us there, and the fact that you can do MDM management of Windows as well is really just pushing that conversation further. So yeah, it's definitely one of our top things. So, and then just the final point here, as always, we have a Connect forum dedicated towards Mac. Again, if you've got any questions, please jump in there, help join the conversation. You're always welcome to contact me directly about anything to do with Mac. I've got Mike here with me as well, because the way that product management is structured, we tend to have disciplines that are product focused. So even though I'm kind of covering Mac as a horizontal layer, if there's any specifics, I tend to turn to Mike around software or patching and things like that. So you can actually contact both of us, but you're always welcome to contact me directly. It's david_evans@symantec.com. In fact, just on the screen here. Just contact me. I will find the right person to put you in touch with. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Just by all means, get in contact with me. I'm based, as you will have probably figured out, in the UK. So time zone permitting, I will respond as quickly as I can and get you that help. So I guess I'll just open up for any more questions if there are any. Okay, the session was that good, there's no questions. Okay, that's great. Well, let's get to some lunch then. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.